Dennis Prager, of all people, one of the prime tradcons, is coming here with a great take. Whammons are disproportionately hurting our country. I never thought I'd hear a tradcuck say this. Like, Prager, who hurt you? What happened in your life to make you realize this? Then when I was in college, I read a book by George Gilder, one of the wisest thinkers of the last half century, titled Naked Nomads, which had a deep impact on me. It was about single men and all the pathologies associated with them. For example, Gilder drove home the point that the biggest factor concerning violent crime was that they're overwhelmingly committed by single men. No, that's the crimes that you bother going after. It's so let's not ignore all the crimes women commit that aren't treated the same as if a man did it. Let's just pretend that doesn't happen. So while there was no danger, I would say no chance that I would commit a violent crime, though I was at the time single. This fact, along with others in the book, made me a lifelong advocate for marriage. Even now. I also came to realize that raising good men was the most important thing a society can do. That part's true. If it doesn't, the male propensity for physical aggression and predatory sexual behavior will wreak havoc. Therefore, raising boys to control their natures is fundamental to society avoiding chaos. Oh, wow. Now we just went completely off the rails. Like, no, it's all about harnessing your nature productively. Over the course of a lifetime, however, I've come to realize that while society was right about males, it was wrong about females. All right, we're making progress. Whether spoken or unspoken, most people thought girls just didn't need to be raised to control their natures nearly as much as boys do. But they do. Wow. This is already way more than I ever expected a tradcuck to admit. Normally, they're all about simping for milady. It's true that females are not inclined to violence or predatory sexual behavior as men are. Bullshit. Bull fucking shit. It's just that no one takes it seriously when they do it until they either kill or horribly injure someone. No, but it hardly means that girls and whammons don't have to learn to control their natures. On the contrary, I've been telling parents for many years now they need to teach their daughters to control their natures just as much as they teach their sons. Which is true. I mean, everyone needs to learn to be a functioning member of society. You know, specifically, girls have to learn to control their emotions. Oh, shit. Shots fired. Just as the male sexual drive and violent impulses can overwhelm their conscience and their ability to think and act rationally, emotions can do the same thing in girls and whammons, overwhelm their conscience and their ability to think and act rationally. Wow, that's quite the assumption, assuming they even can think and act rationally. However, it should be obvious that at least two generations of parents, especially among the well-indoctrinated, did not teach many of their daughters to control their emotions and think rationally. I will actually disagree with this. These girls, they know damn well they can get away with just about anything. They are rationally thinking it through and realize, hey, even if I don't control my emotions and keep flying off the handle, nothing's going to happen to me anyway. So why the hell should I bother? It's not a lack of discipline. It's a lack of consequences. If you don't have negative consequences for someone's actions and instead maybe even have positive ones, you're encouraging that behavior. If you want people to stop acting a certain way, then punish them for acting that way. So the result is that whammons are disproportionately active in doing damage to our society. Yeah, and men aren't keeping them in check. The most obvious example is indoctrination. American schools teach less and indoctrinate more than ever before. And also, they have orders of magnitude more pedophiles than the Catholic Church does, and yet they get a pass, but the church is still shat on. No, big shitty public and most private schools are damaging young Americans to an extent that in ways no one imagined just a few years ago. Homeschool. Young children are being prematurely sexualized. They are, for example, exposed to drag queen story hour in class and in local libraries from age 5. These feature men dressed as women reading and dancing for them. Well, so God, it's not just men dressed as women. They're as flamboyant as possible. So who is facilitating all of this? In virtually every case, whammons. 92% of kindergarten teachers are whammons. 75% of all teachers are whammons. 85% of librarians are whammons. See, this is why I don't care about women's sports. getting just dominated by trans women, because it's women that push for this shit. So, and they are indoctrinating young people to despise their country. The creator of the Poisonous 1619 Project is a whammons, to forget about their white privilege or think of themselves as victims if they are black. Even worse, they're indoctrinating them into non-binary thinking regarding sex and gender. As Shitty Journal reports, the LA Unified School District has adopted a racial gender theory curriculum, encouraging teachers to work towards a breakdown of the gender binary, to experiment with gender pronouns such as they, ze, and tree, and to adopt trans-affirming programming to make the classrooms queer all school year. Parents, you paying attention? You want your kids going to these brainwashing camps? And the same is happening to school districts around the country. Even if you're in a red state, you're not safe. Look, it took Florida up until this year to realize this. So these ideas originated in university gender studies and grievance studies departments, nearly all of whose professors are female. Teachers and their unions did great damage to young people during the Corona Chan. They demanded, because their hypochondria and an apparent inability to apply reason to Corona Chan risk, that schools be closed for nearly 2 years. Teachers unions and big shitties threatened to go on strike if schools opened. Good, fire them all. In general, teachers' unions are just radical arms of the Democratic Party and the regressive movement. Also a fact. They are overwhelmingly composed of whammons members and whammons leaders. The head of the National Indoctrination Association is a whammons, as are the heads of the LA, Chicago, and New York Shitty teachers' unions. That I know that shocks everybody. Whammons, physicians, and healthcare workers are at the vanguard of ruining young people's lives at children's hospitals that push giving young people puberty-blocking hormones and opposite-gender hormones, performing hysterectomies and mastectomies on healthy girls who say they are boys, and chemically or physically castrating healthy boys who say they are girls. So whammons are at the vanguard of perverting the medical profession by advocating the teaching of woke ideologies in medical schools and placing these ideologies on equal footing with medical indoctrination. So last week, the organization called Physicians for Reproductive Health published an open letter to the nation's reporters and news editors demanding they censor anti-abortion activists. So we are asking for a commitment from the community and medical outlets reporting on abortion to keep in mind the true danger that you present when interviewing anti-abortion extremists. You're giving opportunity for dangerous lies to spread. Okay, so the group of people whose ideas are so bad they can't survive unless there's a government upholding them at gunpoint, they're afraid of the free market. If you are so threatened by an opposing idea even existing, it's because you know that your idea is wrong and can't compete. See, our ideas are natural. We don't need government power enforcing our ideas. So as regards to a demand that news outlets censor pro-life individuals and groups, the open letter was signed by more than 600 alleged medical doctors and other healthcare professionals. Nearly every signatory was a whammons, and all 4 of the listed leaders of Physicians for Reproductive Health are whammons. Whammons clergy have been the vanguard of pushing Christianity and Judaism to the left, while leaving mainstream churches and synagogues increasingly empty. Yeah, I know a lot of people that used to be a lot more religious, and they just realized, yeah, I still believe in the book, but I don't believe in organized religion anymore. Now, of course, increasingly feminized male clergy go along with their female colleagues. Yeah. Yep, all these single women are raising boys to be girls. And whammons are disproportionately supportive of cancel culture, the greatest threat to free speech in American history. Cancel them! Dude, just like with censorship, the best way to turn them against cancel culture is to cancel them. So it should go without saying, but it's undoubtedly necessary to note that there are many whammons doing great, even heroic things for our society. Name one. Even I know what he's saying is actually true. There are decent whammons out there. But remember that clip we showed on Flashcast like 2 weeks ago? When you had all these idiots virtue signaling about women's sports. Oh, yeah, I watch the WNBA all the time. Okay, name one player. Name one team. Like, oh, yeah, I can't think of any off the top of my... Yeah, of course you can't. So do the same thing here. Whenever someone says, like, oh, there's plenty of good whammons out there doing these great things, just ask them to name one. Like, name a single one. And I'm talking about, people who are alive right now. I mean, yeah, if you go through historical figures, we were all indoctrinated in school to learn about them. But anytime you see somebody virtue signaling like this, ask them to even name one. Yeah, many men are working to wreck it. Yes, but so this statement right here, many men are working to wreck society. I think we might want to define what a man is, because whatever definition we come up with should exclude soy boys. But for those who associate whammons with instinctively protecting children, even though they're the primary Minecrafters of children, or with being supportive of traditional religious life, this era of American history has provided something of a shock. Yeah, man. So this trad cook boomer is finally like he only took one step in the right direction, but it's still one step further than he was in before. So hey, credit where it's due, man. Now, eventually, but we're gonna have to bring you all the way before you croak of old age.